Hey, good evening. Good evening. Happy Monday, everybody. This is Cindy Baker. I'm the ADHD coach, bringing you some tips every week. Um, and I am the creator of the 3P Power Program, which is a group coaching program. So if you're interested in coaching, make sure you let me know in the comments. If you are watching live, I would love it if you could say hi in the comments, whatever uh, platform you are watching on. And if you're watching the replay, a lot of people watch the replay. Let me know. Just put hashtag replay. Let me know where you are tuning in from. We're actually continuing a discussion from a couple of weeks ago on how to avoid negative thinking traps. I know that sounds boring, but it's really not, uh, because our mindset affects everything in our life. And so we're gonna. This is part two, and it's okay if you missed part one. You can go back and watch the replay, or they're all kind of standalone. So, but if you are watching, let me know in the chat. If you're watching live, let me do a little tech check here. I want to pull it up on my phone to make sure it's streaming like it's supposed to. Okay, I can see myself, so hopefully you can see and hear me too. All right, cool. So last week, or well, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we talked about how our ADHD can contribute to us having these kind of messed up thinking patterns. It keeps us stuck and keeps us making bad choices, right? And if you missed that, you can go catch the replay. It's okay. So we talked about several things. We talked about black and white thinking, kind of that all or nothing thinking. We talked about personalizing, where you take everything like way too personal. And we talked about discounting the positive, which is kind of self-esteem issue, really. And this week, we're going to unpack a few more. And you may not relate to all of these, but if there's one or two that you do, um, hopefully this will just make you a little more aware. So, again, say hi if you are tuning in live. Hey, Sandra. Um, yeah, and let me know if you're watching the replay. Just say hashtag replay. And if you hear something you like, put a little emojis. The more interaction, the better. Um, Otherwise, I just don't know if you're really with me. So, hopefully, this will be helpful to you. We're going to talk about a few more thought distortions, I guess we'll call them negative thinking traps. And the first one is overgeneralizing. Okay, when you overgeneralize, it's like when you decide one bad event or situation, it because that happened, it's going to be repeated throughout your life. Um, so, as an adult with ADHD, you may be thinking, well, but the one bad thing does keep happening. Well, maybe it could be that you keep doing things the same way. And so you are getting the same results. That's a topic for another time. So, if that's the case, maybe you're not overgeneralizing, but with support, you can figure out what keeps you in that stuck place and get that help that you need to move forward. That's one of the things that I like to do as a coach, is to try to figure out what's keeping people stuck. And sometimes it takes me a little while to figure it out, but I like to try to help people discover that so they can move forward. Um, so, like if there's a uh, guy at work, let's say, and he decides he's a loser because he's going to be late delivering a project to, let's call her Charlotte. Okay. We'll call him Tucker. So he's going to be late. And so he's just overgeneralizing. He's like, this means I'm a complete loser. And he forgot about all the times that people came to him for support during times of trouble. In fact, maybe he's the go-to person in times of crisis for his extended family, and they trust him to know what to do. And Um, yeah, he has a difficult time getting projects in on time. He often doesn't meet deadlines. This is typical of ADHD people. Um, but he ends up coming through at the last minute. So I said he has difficulty meeting deadlines, but he does it. So he can be trusted in his work life. Um, so people at home and at work can trust him. And sure, he could probably improve a little bit in that area if he wanted to work on it. But in the meantime, he's overgeneralizing to think that he's a loser because he made that one mistake. And there are four questions that I want you to think about. We're going to talk about that with all of these different thought distortions. And so, in this case, Tucker could use these questions to basically step back and kind of look at his thinking objectively and decide if it's true or not. So the first question is it true? Is it true? He could say, is it true that I'm a loser? And his thought would be, yes, I'm a loser. But then the second question, can I absolutely know that it's true? And he would have to say, no, I guess not. Um, Third question, okay, what does it mean to be a loser? Um, well, he would think, well, it means that you can't be trusted. Um, Never get anything in on time. And he would have to question that. Is it true that I can never be trusted? Well, no. Is it true that I never get anything in on time? No. Well, I guess I'm trusted by my family in crisis situations, and I guess I often do get things in on time. So you have to kind of step back and question because we can exaggerate things when we're feeling emotional and stressed. Um, and so a couple other questions he can ask is, how do I react? Like, what happens when I believe that thought? When I believe that I'm a loser, what's going on? And he might say he's feeling anxious, stressed. He's feeling scared. Um, he knows there might be negative consequences, right? Um, and then he can kind of flip that around and say, who would I be without that thought? Well, he Tucker says, well, I wouldn't be so anxious and I would feel like I can fix this and it wouldn't ruin my career. It's something that I can work on. So that's called a turnaround. And a turnaround, it's a statement that could also be true, and it's the opposite of what Tucker originally believed. Does that make sense? So he turns it around and he thinks, one, I'm not a loser. I do deliver on time. I can be trusted. So now he can kind of start to let go of this view of himself as a loser after going through that process. And I encourage you to try that. Uh, when you have an ADHD brain, it's easy to just let your thoughts just kind of run uh, like on the crazy train. You know what I mean? um, we spiral and we start to lose perspective. When you catch yourself doing that, I want you to just stop and remember this little discussion that we had and step back and just question. Now, is what I'm thinking really true? Can I absolutely know it's true? What would I be like if I didn't have this thought? You know what I mean? Just go through the process. The next time that you find yourself like blowing things out of proportion, overgeneralizing. Okay. So that's the first one, overgeneralizing. How am I doing so far? Are you guys with me? Anybody, if you're watching on the chat, say hi. Oh, all my buddies, Kathy, Andrea, I missed you. Yeah. So if you're watching the replay, I know a lot of people do. Let me know. Don't just be a stalker. Say hashtag replay so that I know which topics you're interested in, and that lets me know that you're watching. Okay, so second thought distortion is emotional reasoning. Now, women are blamed for being too emotional, but men can do this too. Okay, it's equal opportunity. But some people, they might question their thoughts, and they still conclude that how they feel is a fact. Like if Tucker feels like a loser, he may go through that whole reasoning and still feel that way. And so then he thinks, because I feel this way, it's got to be true. And that's called emotional reasoning. And so you decide in that case that your feelings are evidence of a reality, but they're just feelings. So, for example, if you have a day where you feel helpless and just pathetic, then you decide it must be a fact. I'm helpless and I'm pathetic. No, it's just a feeling, and feelings come and go. And your feelings and thoughts become this mutually reinforcing cycle. So you have some troubling emotions, and you think that's true. So it's the emotion, the thought, and then because you're thinking that, you have more negative emotions and then more negative thoughts, and it's a kind of a mutually reinforcing cycle, if you will. So if Tucker, allows his feelings to guide his actions, he may never fix his problem. He's going to stay stuck. Like he may never get his work in on time because he's already just accepted this what am I trying to say? This description of himself as being somebody who can't get things in on time. Because he thinks, well, after all, losers just can't get their work in on time. So why even try? Um, I, one of my early clients in my coaching program, one of the things she said when she got finished with the program was she was just amazed at how she was able to get rid of clutter in her house, because she just thought she was just going to always be a clutter person. In other words, she had accepted um, a label for herself that wasn't true. And so when she learned strategies and skills that worked for the way her brain works, she was amazed. She was like, that wasn't me. I wasn't a clutter person. I just thought I was, Um, so if Tucker just gives up and he says, it's not, this is just who I am, there's no use trying. Um, if he's not yet learned how to address his executive function challenges, which is what that is when you have trouble getting things in on time, like planning and estimating how long something will take. If he doesn't work on that, his emotional reasoning is going to be his downfall, um, and that emotional reasoning may be a reflection of his history of untreated ADHD. If you don't learn how to manage your ADHD brain, you might fall into that emotional reasoning trap more easily. So he needs to do some relabeling, relabel the messages. He can say, I definitely messed up, but that does not make me a loser. I'm just human. And he could reframe the situation. I'll need to make this right. I also need to get some help so that I can get better at delivering projects on time. And then he just needs to refocus his energy. I need to get in touch with Charlotte and renegotiate the deadline. I also have to pay attention to my other work right now. Like he needs to hone in on what's the next right thing in front of him to do. And it's important to value your feelings for what they are. He can be honest with himself. He can say, I feel like a loser right now, but it's not who I am. He can even say that out loud in the mirror. I know that's weird, but it works. Ask my mirror. But he could say, it's not who I am. I'm not going to quit my business because of this. Sometimes you just have to step back and give yourself a little logic talk, Anybody struggle with either of those first two? Like the turnaround. Hey, Larjo. I'm not reading comments on every platform this is streaming to. So yeah, keep commenting wherever you're watching this, because I do circle back around and read those. So if you have a question or a comment, let me know. So another one is called catastrophizing. You know, that's like making things out to be bigger than they really are. Like, do you remember the little story about Chicken Little? He kept saying, I think an apple fell on his head or something, and he said, "The sky is falling, the sky is falling." It's kind of like that. Like when it's sort of exaggerating. When you catastrophize, it's also psychologists call it magnifying. Then you think things are much worse than they really are. Now, I'll be honest, I kind of fall into this trap sometimes. Sometimes I get panicky if something goes wrong, and I like just imagine the worst. Um, so like when Tucker knew that he was going to be late turning in the project, he started thinking, I just know Charlotte's going to tell everybody how irresponsible I am, and then nobody's going to ever want to hire me ever. Okay, maybe I'll get a job, but it's not going to be like this one. I'll never be able to pay my bills, and then I might have to move. You see that spiral that he just went down? I mean, can you think of a situation when you've kind of followed a similar trail in your brain? Anybody relate to that? Let me see the ones in the chat. Yes, we got a couple of yeses. Yeah, how did that turn out when you did that? Just like all of his other faulty thinking, catastrophizing kept Tucker from focusing on his work, which is what he needed to be doing. He needed to be problem solving, not wallowing around in his emotions. But it's real similar to overgeneralizing. Um, it it's just like that in that his thoughts are not based in reality, and it's going to take some work for Tucker to address those thoughts because they're probably automatic. He's probably That's kind of been his mo most of his life. So one way that I have not personally tried this, but I know that some counselors and psychologists will suggest maybe writing thoughts, like keeping a thought record if you have these negative thought traps. So you write the situation or the trigger, if you will. So, like for instance, the trigger would be Tucker realizes he's going to be late delivering the project to his client or his coworker or whatever. And then you write down the trigger, you write down the feelings, and then you write down the facts. So the feeling would be I'm anxious and scared. And then the initial thought, you could say trigger, feeling, the initial thought that you had. In his case, it was I'm a loser and I can't be trusted. And then facts that support that unhelpful thought. And he would say, well, I'm late delivering a project for a new client. Who would do that? Um, and then any facts that provide evidence against the unhelpful thought. And there's something to be said for just journaling about this, writing it down. He could say, well, I have turned in projects many times before on time. So it's a more realistic, balanced perspective. The truth is he just didn't plan very well in this particular time, and he needs to get better at that. So he needs to just step back and say, okay, I need to tell my client I'm going to be late. I can't put it off anymore, and I'm going to see what I can do to make it right. She might be mad, but I can handle that. It's not the end of the world. I mean, do you see the difference between just letting your emotions carry you away and then actually trying to problem solve? Because the last thing he could write down is after he has kind of debunked the initial unhelpful thought, he might have a different emotion. He might say, well, I feel confident now. I can handle this. I don't have to keep repeating the same mistake. Does that make sense? What are you guys saying here in the, I guess this is a Facebook group chat. Yes. All right, come on, guys, don't fall asleep on me. Come on, Monday. All right, uh, let's talk about one or two more. Um, Jumping to conclusions. Okay, everybody's done it. But that's another trap. It's if you're jumping to conclusions that are not supported by facts. Some people call that mind reading or crystal ball thinking. Um, those are two different ways that you can reach false conclusions. And like Tucker, he was kind of doing the mind reading thing when he thought he knew how Charlotte was going to react. He hadn't even talked to her yet. He had already put himself inside her head and assumed the worst. And he was using kind of that crystal ball thinking when he just he concluded that Charlotte's going to tell everybody how irresponsible he is. He's never going to get another contract anywhere ever. He's like predicting the future. That's called crystal ball thinking. So again, let's go back through those 4 questions. Is it true that Charlotte will tell everybody how irresponsible I am? He doesn't know. Can I absolutely know it's true? No. How do I react when that happens? Like what is he believing when he believes that thought? How is he reacting? And he can say, well, I'm anxious and I'm scared and I have a hard time working. What would he be like without that thought? He'd be a lot calmer, right? Do the turnaround. He could say, he could just admit he doesn't really trust himself sometimes. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't trust him. She might actually trust him to do good work. She isn't the kind of person to spread rumors. So all these things he's got to turn it back around and sit in the reality for a little bit. Does that make sense? All right, let's do another one. Okay, should statements. Someone said to me the other day, Cindy, stop shoulding on yourself. But that's true. Should statements, those are like rules that you have about how you and others need to behave. That's an especially harmful type of negative thinking for adults with ADHD. Like Tucker had rules, right? In his head, he said people should never be late delivering work. People should not be trusted if they're late delivering work. People must always follow through on what they promise if they want to stay in business. In other words, they have to be perfect. He thinks, to be considered a professional, you can't make any mistakes. And when he directed those statements at himself, he felt guilty and he felt frustrated because he wasn't living up to his own rules, And when he directs them at others, he gets angry and he gets frustrated and he gets resentful because guess what? They don't follow the rules either. They're also human and they can't live up to his perfection rules or whatever. So think about that. I'm curious in the chat. Tell me what should statements do you catch yourself saying? I should do this, or I should be that, or I should. Anybody want to share? Anybody want to share any should statements that you can think of? When you're thinking of those, and it's okay if they're private, I get it. But think about it in your head, and then how do you feel and behave when you direct those statements at yourself? How do you think other people feel when you direct them at them? Maybe you think should statements are going to motivate you, but they're probably not working because you may end up doing the opposite. Tucker ended up just shutting down. He couldn't concentrate on his work, and that made his situation worse. Remember? So do you do that? Do you kind of, are you too hard on yourself? Like, what would happen if Tucker replaced those thoughts, with, oh, stuff happens sometimes, and I'm gonna miss deadlines sometimes. I'm gonna create deadlines with the information I have at the time. I'm gonna do the best that I can to give a trustworthy estimate. I may have to make some changes along the way in my business, and that's okay. To excel in business, I need to stretch, or I'm not gonna grow. Something like that. You know, um, he needs to say to himself, stretching and growing means I'm going to make mistakes sometimes. The bottom line is this, your distorted thinking, your negative thinking traps, they're going to hold you back from working effectively with your ADHD. Um, we hear a lot about mindset, and the word is overused, but it is important. But the good news is that there are lots of strategies that you can use to avoid negative thinking traps. Um, Next week, I am hosting the Chaos to Control Challenge, which is a free live challenge. You have an option to upgrade to VIP if you want to be on Zoom with me and get a little private Q&A. Um, but it is going to be in my Facebook group. And I encourage you to sign up for that. It's just www.chaostocontrolchallenge.com. Chaostocontrolchallenge.com. Um, because we're going to talk about a lot about time management, ADHD friendly time management, but also a lot of how your mindset affects how you use your time. And so I encourage you to sign up for that. Bring a friend. I'm doing pre-challenge all this week, which means that you can win uh, a gift card if you do the homework each day. And so today's homework was just to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, if you're signed up for the challenge. So I encourage you to check that out. And we will not have a Monday night talk next week because of the challenge. So come to the challenge instead. I think you'll really like it. And it's good to see so many of you on here. If you're watching the replay, let me know. And hopefully I will see you next week in the challenge. Bye.